Hello, everyone. Welcome. I love seeing where everyone's from. Please keep dropping it in the chat. It's great to see folks from so many different places joining the webinar today. I'm Sage. I'm one of the product experts here at UXPin, and we're so excited to have you all joining us. So our topic for today is enterprise design systems and how to scale them. Today, we'll be covering tactics to gain cross-functional support and buy-in for your design system, how to adopt a design system strategy that actually works, and how to sustain the change through a socialization model. We are so lucky to have Amber Jabeen leading this important discussion. And before we get started, I do want to go over a couple of housekeeping items so that you know how to participate in today's event. So please drop your questions in the Q&A section and upvote the ones that you're most interested in. We'll walk through these at the end of the webinar. And for those of you who have a few minutes extra, I highly recommend hanging out after the Q&A. We will be sharing an exciting and emerging technology that bridges the gap between design and development. So with that being said, I know the audience is very excited about this topic, so I will pass the mic and let Amber take it from here.
Thank you so much, Sage. Really happy to join the webinar today. Thank you so much to everybody, UXPin team for providing the platform for this important discussion, and to everybody who's joined from anywhere today. And I really hope that I share a great story and something valuable to learn from the session. So let me share my screen, and I hope that everybody can see my screen. That's a bit of a surprise. Anyways, so let's do this, guys. My name is Amber. I work for Delivery Hero MENA. The brand name is talabat under Delivery Hero. And I work as director design ops, leading a design system team and a central design studio team, as well as a program management team. So today, the story that I want to share with all of you is very exciting. I'm very passionate about this space, and it's about how to build and scale a design system and how we did it for talabat, and the learnings that we have gathered along the way. So let's not wait further. Let me start. So what is it that I want to leave you guys today with? What are the lessons that I have learned during this journey? So the first one that I want to share and talk about is how to gain the support and buy-in for a design system from your cross-functional partners. And this is the hardest part. And when you go ahead and initiate a design system initiative, and you start building a design system, this is the first step that you need to get the funding. You need to sustain your initiative. And a lot of us, especially for me, it's been really a big challenge. But I think along the way, I've learned some lessons that I'm really happy to share with you guys today. Another one that I will be highlighting is which design system strategies are successful. I tried a lot of strategies. I tried a lot of different approaches, and I think dozens of different decks that I presented to all sorts of stakeholders. And now I think I've really zeroed down on the ones that have worked and they have been successful with for us. And this is what I want to share with you guys. Another one is how to sustain the change through a socialization model. So once you have your design system, you start building it, you even have a team, it's really hard to sustain the change. It's a transformation, it's a product that you're building. So how do you sustain that change, and how do you keep the transformation going and keep people engaged? So these are the three topics that I will be sharing with you guys today. So just to build a bit of context here, Delivery Hero is one of the largest online delivery services across Americas, Europe, Middle East, and North Africa, and Asia. And talabat is, so there are about 4 brands under the MENA region, and talabat is one of them. and talabat caters to around 9 markets in the MENA region. And this design system story is basically for talabat. This is the design system that our team built for the brand called talabat. So before I begin this story, I want to give special thanks to the entire team behind behind this design system. All the developers, all the designers, everyone, people from program management, as well as the entire talabat product design team, research team, and all our squad engineers who've contributed greatly to the design system. A big thanks to all of them, and recognition. A quick shout out to the founding members of the design system team as well. And of course, they are the ones who initiated this, and we will never forget about them. So this looks impressive. You see a lot of people and you're like, okay, maybe all of them worked and it was a huge effort and everything. But in the beginning, it was a really humble story. So where did it all start for us? This is where it started. Back in 2019, we were only 4 product designers who were supporting 9 different feature teams. Product was scaling really fast, but we didn't have a UI library to begin with, or even a design system. We were building new features, we were launching new verticals, which means more and more feature teams were being added. Our product design team was really small. It was very, very hard to scale design. Not having a design system, not having even a UI library, it was really hard to even control the effort, the amount of effort we were investing in designing new screens or new features. And we were also suffering from silos, which is a very classic, when you don't have a single source of truth, you can work in silos, you can work excessively on things that have already been solved, perhaps. And all of this, the silos, the duplicate effort, the lack of having a source of truth, it was all leading to having a highly fragmented experience in the app. So what a product design team at that time did, they went ahead and they conducted an audit. When they did an audit, this is one of the screenshots that I extracted from their audit report. It was quite visible the amount of inconsistencies we had in the experience. So we had several styles for our CTAs. Typography styles were not standardized. Iconography had no particular style to it. So basically our design language was all over the place. And this was a big moment of realization. Of course, it was quite visible when you went through the experience. But when we did the audit, it was quite visible what we were dealing with. And it was huge. So product design team, they put together a business case and they went to the leadership and they showcased this and they actually got the buy-in to redesign the app. So we came back and the team back then, we actually redesigned the key screens or the major parts of our experience. So app started we were designing in Sketch. So it started looking much, much better. There was consistency. It was a much cleaner and much better, more aligned with our brand experience, but it was still in Sketch. So what we did, once we validated with users and we were feeling more comfortable and confident with our new direction and our new design language, we started turning it into a proper UI library. And we built our first ever UI library for talabat in Sketch. So we put together styles for colors, typography, elevation, and all the standard things that you do when you build a UI library. We also put together our most common global UI patterns. So starting with our CTAs, chips, and as you can see, headers and some other UI components. So once we built the library and our designers, our design team was also scaling, and we had hired more designers and everybody started using the library to design new interfaces. It was apparent that the library, the UI library, was actually making designs really consistent. It was helping us scale design. So we were able to create more and more interfaces using our design library. And it was helping us to scale design. So this was really good. And we realized, okay, We have a source of truth for our product designers. Now we need a source of truth for our engineers, because why should we stop here? We have a pretty great UI library. Now we want to ship these new designs. So we want to build a code library. So once we realized that, we put together, we said, okay, we need to build a code library of components. And the product design team, as a product design team, we came back and we put together a very nice business case, with all the slides, all the nice bullet points that design equals code means a better user experience. It really strengthens our brand. It allows us to do faster experiments, yada, yada, yada. All the standard stuff that you do when you build a design system business case. And believe you me, it was really nice. It looked very shiny. The deck was beautifully designed. And we did several of those decks. And we went to our stakeholders and we made those presentations to get the buy-in to actually build our first components code library. And the answer that we got was, yes, it's good. It's nice. It looks good on paper. But for now, no. There was no investment to build a components library yet. The case was still weak. It was not that convincing for our stakeholders. What was convincing, that we have these really nicely designed screens. Why don't we build and ship these new designs? And it will have an immediate impact. So we were actually looking for immediate impact, which was fine. So we came back and we actually turned it into a project. We put together some timelines and we had this really amazing launch where we invited all our squads and we sold the idea, okay, we're going to build this. We have a UI library. These are the components. These are the new designs, and let's build and ship this new design language. And it was amazing. Next 3 months, we work on this project. Everybody focuses on the redesign of the app. And it was a successful project. We managed to ship almost 70% of those newly designed screens to our app, to our users. We were really, really proud of ourselves. We were very happy. It was a success story. Of course, once you have a redesign and you ship it, you launch it, then you go back and you start building features. That's what product does, right? So in the next 2 quarters, we actually built a lot of new features. As I said, that we were scaling as an organization, introducing new verticals and new features. So we kept building for the next 2 quarters. We did a lot of experiments as well. And more screens, more and more interfaces. Remember, we had a UI library, so we could always see that our designs were very consistent and we were happy about that. But once those designs landed to a developer's desk and they start building it, they have no source of truth to compare with the library. So they always start afresh and they build those interfaces, and the next developer, they need something, they copy it and paste it in their code. And that's how we kept multiplying the code and the debt in the code. What we did during these 6 months, we were thinking that we were going to go back and we are going to build a new business case for our stakeholders, and we are not going to let it go. We are going to build a library and we're going to get resources for that. But we needed a much stronger business case this time. So what we did was we established, as a product design team, we established a UI audit practice. So every 4 weeks, whatever we ship, we take snapshots from the app and we put it on a Miro board and we do a comparison, like what was designed in Figma versus what was shipped in code. And by putting this monthly audit practice together and these audits together, we were able to bring visibility to how we were collecting debt with every release. And we kept socializing this and kept sharing it everywhere and just, creating awareness of where it was leading. In the beginning, it was not that much. It was not significant debt, but over 6 months, it became quite significant. So we created a Jira backlog where we logged each and every debt ticket. and it actually turned into a significant backlog. One such audit revealed that we had about 15 pages in the experience showing a no results message. You know, when the user is searching for something, there's nothing, there's no results. So we show a no results interface. Our user hasn't placed any orders, so there is no records. So we show this message. And as you can see in the snapshot here, that we had 15 of those, around 15 of those screens in our experience, and each and every one looks different. Their UI is different. Their UX patterns are also inconsistent. And this was the moment when we kind of sealed the deal and we realized, okay, this is the moment we were waiting for. And this is something that we can turn into a business case. What we did was, of course, we didn't have any dedicated developers yet to our design system team. We had designers. So we came back and we talked around and we asked around, and we kind of partnered with some EMs and showed them, okay, this is what we have in mind. Can you partner with us? And we found some developers who wanted to contribute the first component. And this is, again, not an official project. It's based on, you know, building partnerships and building relationships with your cross-functional partners. So when we got a developer who wanted to contribute the first component, then we selected this particular component or this particular interface, and we did an experiment, and we built our very first component. This was the experiment that we conducted. So we estimated time that if we don't have this component and we build without the design system component, how much is the time per screen? And it was about half an hour. And then we multiplied it with 15 screens, and it came down to 7.5 hours of dev time. This is only front-end effort time. And then in another experiment, then we built the reusable component. The building time of the component was around 2 hours. And then we estimated adoption time in one of the screens, and it was about 5 minutes. Then we calculated for 15 minutes what it would mean to adopt this component. And it came down to 1.25 hours. All in all, if you build these interfaces or this interface of 15 different screens using a reusable component, it was going to be 3.25 hours. The difference in time was around 57% reduction in front-end effort. That was significant. We had conducted an experiment and we had our case ready. So the point that I want to highlight here is, when you approach a product, when you try to solve a problem, you first identify the problem. And then when you identify what solution is going to solve this problem, you must build the value proposition. What is the value proposition? And this was the building block that was missing from our business case, that we said a lot of things, that it was going to strengthen the brand and it was going to bring consistency, but we did not pay much attention to bringing out or focusing on that value prop. When we did this experiment, we were convinced that our value prop was very clear that we were going to take to our stakeholders. And this is what we went to them with. It was a very simple business case where we showed them our experiment, the results of the experiment, with this simple statement as our value prop for the design system. If you let us build design system components library, it will enable you to save half of the front-end building time. So you will literally be saving half of your front-end engineers. And of course, it would reduce your UI debt to 0. This was quite compelling, and it was a strong as a statement as well. And the next, of course, as you can guess, that this was convincing for our stakeholders, and we got the buy-in to actually invest in the design system components library at the code level. This was really exciting for us. Today, we started building the design system library coded components, I think about 9 months ago. Today, the design system houses 30+ components, both in design and code. We have a single source of truth both in our designs, in our Figma library, in our Figma screens, Figma files, as well as at code level. It's a universal components library that around 20 of our squads are using now in building interfaces and new features. We have a dedicated design system team. We have invested in building a website. This is a detailed documentation which lives on this website. We have Slack channel, ways of working, ways of communicating. We have also invested time and effort into actually building the documentation, both for designers as well as for our engineers, for each and every platform that we cover. So if you go to, let's say, a component page on our website, design system website, you will literally see examples and everything, beautifully written guidelines, both for designers as well as for developers, accompanied with snapshots of the real experience. We also invested significant amount of time, I would say, and effort in building our ways of working. Sometimes design systems adoption and engagement suffers because design system ways of working are not well thought out, or there's not enough feedback, or the feedback flow is not smooth. So teams shy away from giving feedback to you or letting you know where they're feeling friction. So what we have done is we've built and refined our ways of working, contribution guidelines, both again for designers and developers for each platform. So I want to take a pause here. It's definitely, I'm not saying that it's a perfect design system world. We are still, there are many battles that we still on a daily basis, we're still fighting. But I would say that we have come a long way from where we started. In terms of maturity of the design system, we have brought from no UI library to a fully developed and soon to be, even more mature design system in every possible way, whether it's dedicated team or ways of working or having documentation and engagement and adoption. So from this journey of getting the buy-in and support from your cross-functional partners, or people actually who would support and finance this initiative or this idea, I've learned a lot of lessons. And what I've learned the most is that you start with a real pain point. There are a lot of articles out there. There are a lot of presentations out there that you can watch, a lot of videos that you can watch, and you can learn a lot how to put together a business case, how to do a presentation. But if you make it real, if you focus on it, and every organization's pain point is different. So what I'm going to tell you today about talabat, you might have a really different challenge from talabat. So finding a real pain point that's hurting most of your stakeholders or that's hurting your organization is very, very important. Once you have that, how are you going to solve the product that you're selling or the idea that you're selling to your stakeholders? What's the value prop? Make it really punchy, make it real, and find that value prop before you start building your business case. It has to be something that revolves around an idea and it solves the pain point, or it solves the need of the organization. Before you go and do the business case, it's really important that you identify your biggest supporters, who's going to support you, and of course, who's going to sponsor this initiative. It's important to know who's going to support you and find those supporters across the organization, because if you go alone, it's not as powerful as having support and going together as a we recognize that this is what we need. This is the problem we have, and we have already built support and stakeholders around this idea. So it really helps always to go with your stakeholders, with your supporters to make the business case. And something very important, and I shared it with you already, I think, show your story instead of telling your story. In the beginning, what I did was, as a team, even, that we told our story instead of showing what it could do. And when we did that experiment and we showed that this is what it could do, the story became much more compelling and the business case became much more convincing. So this is what I would recommend, that building your business case around a real use case, and maybe starting with the most impactful component, maybe even focusing on the UX side of things and not just the UI consistency, maybe showing that, you know, users, it improves the experience or it improves conversions, maybe. Your business case, for me, it's been important to understand and talk about metrics. If we don't tie the narrative of the business case with the KPIs of business or with the metrics that are going to impact business, then the story is not complete. And it's important to tie the whole story. So always include things like dev time, for example. This is the biggest KPIs of design systems, that you save dev time when you have a single source of truth, both for design and developers, designers and developers. Design systems also promise to resolve debt. So that's another metric that you could talk about. Change management in a fast growing organization, building product without having a design system, without having a source of truth for your teams is dangerous, and it really hinders the change management process. So it's important that when you build your case, you also talk about how it's going to help you through the transformation that the org is going to go through, it's going through. So that really helps me, including and talking about the change management process and how it's going to ease things up. And then another thing is time to market. This is an important one. This is a critical one for business, especially if you're talking to business. Of course, product wants to learn fast, ship fast, and design systems are a great way to achieve that. So time to market, if you can, you know, measure it that every week we are shipping this many features, if we reduce the front-end effort time through this library or through this design system, we are going to be able to, you know, cut down that time or maybe increase the number of experiments that we are shipping to market. So those are some points that I think about when I talk about building the buy-in and support for the design system, and these points have really helped me. Another one is don't go alone, build your network. This was a hard learned lesson for me in the beginning, that if you go alone, for example, I started with design. So if design goes alone as a discipline and you don't have the support from your peers, from your, you know, cross-functional partners, for example, from tech, it's going to be a weak position to negotiate from. So see who can help you. So see who can support you, who's on board with you. Maybe, you know, your CTO, your VP of tech, or EMs, engineering managers, anybody from the other side, marketing, who's got some interest in this area, who understands the story and who can be your accomplice in this journey. So going alone, I mean, building your network and going with your partners is far better than going and trying to do this alone. So these are just some of the ideas that I have gathered over the years, I would say, while trying to build in and trying to also learn on the fly how to build a better buy-in case, and how to continuously build support from cross-functional partners to initiate a design system project and then actually turn it into a fully funded idea, or treat it as a product and continuous support from everywhere. And then, of course, you have your design system team. Everybody's, you know, building components, and you're doing great, and you've got your, I don't know, funding for the whole year, and it's looking good. You've got a team. It's a proud moment, right? But what happens after that first year? You built the design system, but you need continuously continuous support from your sponsor, from business, from your partners. How do you show that? How do you show that it's successful? And how do you deliver continuous impact? That's the next big challenge after you nail your buy-in and you actually build the design system. So the next challenge for us was, how do we show success? And I believe that the success of a design system really depends on its adoption. It's like a product, right? You build something, and until you have users using your product, it's not successful. And just like the design system, if your designers, your developers, your product managers, they're not using your system, it's not a, why would business invest in something that nobody's using? So adoption, it all comes down to adoption, the success of it. Adoption is a bumpy road. And we tried a lot of different approaches. We tried, I think, 360, top, down, left, right, every single way out there to see how we can get adoption up. But it really came down to an interesting strategy, I would say. And I've actually combined and consolidated different initiatives that we established to ramp up adoption of our design system. And whatever worked for us, I've kind of consolidated it into a strategy, into an adoption strategy. So this interesting adoption strategy is based on 3 components. The first component is gamification, or gamify. The second one is socialize, and the third one is celebrate. I'll talk in more detail about each one of them and show you what I actually mean and what we actually did. So, okay, before I go into gamification, I want to talk a little bit about the North Star, the vision. You know, just you start building something as big as a design system, and you treat it as a product. You want it to be treated as a product, and you want it to be continuously, you know, funded. You want to rally the whole organization of thousands of people around it. How do you, you're not going to be able to do it unless you have a vision, unless you're giving a why to those people to believe in. So you really need to build that vision before you think about or start any strategies. This is where the team started. We thought about, okay, what is the problem that we are solving? And we spoke to our stakeholders, we spoke to the teams that we worked with, and then we brought home all the findings and all the insights that we got from people. And we zeroed down on, okay, this is the idea. Through our design system, we want to deliver a consistently delightful user experience across all platforms that we build in. So I've highlighted consistently delightful here, and I'll explain why I've highlighted that. So consistency for us doesn't mean UI consistency. It means that always, without exception. Don't make me think. If your UI is consistent, the learning curve would go down anyways. So, but the basic idea is that don't make users think, just make it simple. Keep it simple, consistently, always, without exception. So we don't design difficult interfaces, or we don't, you know, deviate from the idea of making it simple. And the other keyword is delightful. So delight means different things to different people. And we realized that we use a fancy word and a fluffy word, as fluffy a word as delightful. We need to really nail and translate it, what it means for our people. What does it mean for talabat? So again, delightful for talabat means that we really care about our users. So we care about our users of the design system, but we also care about the users that our product has. And then made for me means personalized, that the experience is really personalized. It's when I'm using it, I feel like, okay, it's for me. It's designed for me. It's not designed for millions of users from 9 different markets. It's designed for me. And of course, we're a delivery company, so we want to deliver fast. We want to make it simple, and we want to make it fun. So when you're, you know, ordering your next delivery, you're also having some fun while you're doing it. So this is the North Star. This is the vision that we built before we started talking about, you know, strategy or anything fluffy. But once you have your North Star, where you want to lead people and you sell this North Star to people, and this is what we did, we turned it into posters and we talked to everybody about this North Star, that this design system and this design language is going to deliver on this promise. The next part was, how do you even go about, you know, delivering this vision? So after trying out a lot of, you know, strategies, a lot of different approaches, we came up with this, as I said earlier, gamification. So we wanted to drive adoption. And if anyone here who's worked on driving adoption, you've been a design system leader, you're a design system designer, or you're an engineer and you have tackled adoption, it's a rough ride. It's really an uphill battle. And it's difficult to convince people to start using and building in a completely different way. It's much easier as an engineer, for example, for me to, if I'm building an interface and I've already, 50% of the interface already available in another file, I'm just going to copy that code and I'm going to paste it and let's go. It's done. But we were challenging people. We were asking people to not do that and actually build component by component every fresh interface. It was going to, but in the beginning, it was going to take a little more time. So we needed to make it fun for people, to make it a little bit competitive, and to make it convincing for them to invest their time and effort in this. So we came up with this idea together as a team that we will have adoption tiers. Just like in a game, we started with a bronze layer tier, and then we took it to silver. So bronze was really starting with foundations. So if you're aware of the design tokens concept, they're really variables or in code where you save values of your font styles, your colors, and spacing, stuff like that, that you don't want people to hard code, but consume it from a central library. So we really asked people to do the basic stuff and start replacing that ad hoc code and just connect their components, connect their typography and colors to our system, to a central system. That was what the foundations was about. And then the next level was silver, or the next tier was silver. It was about consistency and cohesiveness in the experience. And once they start adopting our components from the library, they start having a consistent and cohesive experience or interfaces. That was tier 2. And as people got enthusiastic and, some did their homework earlier and they reached a certain tier and met their targets for adoption, we moved them to the next adoption target. And gold, for example, was about having a delightful experience. So really incorporating voice and tone and UX principles, micro interactions, haptics, transitions. And the last one was platinum. We always wanted to give people something that they always look forward to, and they always a little out of their reach. And that's a premium experience where we incorporate motion, dark theme, voice-enabled interfaces, and it really innovate the experience with the design language. So these are the 4 tiers that we created. Then we turned it into a poster again, and we printed it out, put it around the office, and we talked to each and every team about this. We showcased it, and we literally socialized it to every single person in our product and tech and marketing and other functions. We also, as people started using these tiers and they started, having these adoption goals as their targets, and they started moving through these tiers, it was important that they would be able to actually see their progress. It was really important for us. So we built a very basic dashboard for them where they could see as they were adopting the design system in their code, they could see where they stood and how much of the ground they still had to cover. And they would also be able to communicate progress through their teams. So this was a very simple dashboard. So that was about gamification and how we made it fun for our teams to drive adoption. So the second component of our adoption strategy was socializing. So once we had all these adoption tiers, we just took it out there. We made it a community thing. The first initiative that we did was for the design system. We opened the design system naming competition to everyone. We actually invited everybody to suggest a name for the design system, and we did a voting competition where we selected through votes the final name for our design system. We lovingly call it Marshmallow. people own this name because they came up with this name, and people own the product as well because they are the ones who created the name for it, who gave it an identity, and they're very excited about it. This way, through this community-driven initiative, we were able to have people be invested and engaged in the design system initiative. We even created an avatar, a hashtag, an emoji. Last thing we have to do is create a meme of our design system. Anyways, so we organized open design showcase events where we invited people to give us feedback. How are we doing? How do you like the new design language? And we got live feedback from them. And then things like sending feedback surveys to engage with people. We formed a design system guild across Delivery Hero. So to learn from other brands, Delivery Hero brands, how their design systems, what challenges they were facing. So learn from each other and just grow the community around the initiative. And then we established a regular newsletter which communicated updates about the design system, how adoption is going, and then giving recognition and just keeping in touch with our teams as well as its stakeholders. So this was like a whole socialization kind of a strategy, which was put together to make the whole thing a community driven, give it a community driven perspective. These are some snapshots that I grabbed for you guys. So it's a poster, that's our design system, that's marshmallow emoji. And some moments from our open showcase event for the design system. We even served marshmallows to our guests. So it was just like having some fun with the design system. All right, so the third component and the most important component, folks, I would say, celebrate progress. So when you're really invested in building a design system, something as huge and as intense as a design system, you might forget that you're actually winning. Those are small wins, but they still require you to acknowledge and celebrate them. I consider that we are really good at this. So we celebrated our small wins, which led us to really big wins. So when we shipped 70% of our new design language, we celebrated it. We give recognition to people on any channel that we could get our hands on. Was it a company all hands or Slack channels, or just taking photographs and sharing with each other? We also celebrated adoption tiers, as I showed you previously, that we had adoption tiers. So we celebrated each team's progress across those tiers. And that really made people, motivated them to push for bigger goals. And it really also encouraged contribution to our design system. So when it comes to celebrating and giving recognition, I think the next step for us is to really consider how we can reward contributions. Because I believe that no design system you can build a design system, but you cannot grow it or you cannot scale it without a healthy dose of contributions. So we want to drive healthy organic contributions for our design system. And a great way of doing that is to reward those people who are contributing to the system. And I believe that having it, making it a part of our performance reviews would really help. But it is yet to be seen, something that I want to explore. So what is it? How do we make our design system to be successful? This is our story. This is what worked for talabat, that we have a strategy, we have an adoption strategy, which is based on gamification, making it fun, adding a little bit of spice by adding a little competition, and then socializing the whole vision and strategy, and then celebrating small wins leading up to big wins. This is really a great learning for us, and this has been a game changer as well for our teams. What is the impact? This was all that we did to drive adoption, but what is really the impact? The graph that you see here, it shows some components or key components of our design system. and their adoption. So you see the total number of, instances of those components or in code, or total number of places they appear in the app versus where they have been adopted. And we have seen a very consistent growth in adoption, and it's really, really promising. And by ramping up adoption with our squads, we have also seen that it actually reduces the design debt by approximately 20% month over month. How do we know that? You remember I mentioned that we built a backlog in Jira to record and track our UI debt. So we had all those debt tickets. So every time a screen loses the code and it's replaced by a component, that debt is resolved, and we can actually see how the experience is becoming more and more consistent, not just visually, but what it means in terms of what you can track. We also established an 80, this rule. This is really helpful, 80-20 rule. I think you can search it. It's famous for design systems. When you're building an interface, if you build 80% of an interface or a screen using your design system components, and 20% is leaves room for experiments or new components or introducing something new, it actually helps you to reduce front-end effort by approximately 40%. And this is something that we saw happen with our new features. So we worked with our engineering managers to make, in all new features that our teams were building, we made it mandatory for our teams to build using the design system component. If you're building an interface that has a bunch of a button, or a bunch of links, a header, and some other common components, and you have them available in the library, you must use that instead of creating or copying and pasting code from other places. When our teams adopted this idea, it really resulted into significant savings in their time. Now they are so used to the idea that we don't even have to talk about this, and people are actually reaching out to us and asking, okay, I want to use these components. And sometimes if there are any discrepancies in design, the developers are reaching out to our teams and asking them, okay, I see that this is not available in the design system library, and how can I still use the component? So it's actually, the design system is driving those conversations, which is a great win, I would say. And of course, when you have component adoption, which is healthily growing, you will see it would lead to a consistent and coherent experience. And in whatever way you track it, you would be able to see a significant difference that you can communicate to your stakeholders. So what are the successful strategies? In the beginning of the presentation, I promised you that I'll share some successful strategies with you. And I hope this is helpful. This has been successful for me. They say that it takes a village to raise a child. I say that it takes a tribe to build and run a design system. It's not something that you can do alone, or you have even if you have a dedicated team, you can do it alone. Believe me, I have a dedicated team, and it's a pretty big team. Still, it would be no success if I did not rely on my cross-functional partners. So partners in most importantly, partners in tech, which is great in talabat. We have great tech support. And then partners in design, of course. Design leadership is a great champion of our design system. The entire product design team, and everywhere, basically all our squad engineers, and everybody is kind of a whole tribe that pushes towards the design system vision and adoption. Sustainable adoption strategy, again, base it on community-driven initiatives. So when you are thinking about how you're going to ramp up adoption, or how you're going to have a strategize adoption, just also consider that if you approach it from the community point of view, and if you actually rally everybody around this, it would be a much easier goal to achieve rather than, going for, I don't know, top down or something. I haven't seen that working. So I really, in the beginning, I actually reached out to every single product designer, had one-to-ones. My calendars were crazy, but it really paid off in some time. So I believe in that you reach out to your community, make yourself always available, have a 5-star customer service for all your users, be responsive on whatever communication channels you're available. So all these things really give you a boost to your adoption. And then another one is quantify success. Quantifying success could be different for different organizations. Again, base it on your value proposition. What is it that you set out to achieve, or you set out to offer? So find some metrics that you can showcase in the end. Sometimes I've seen that it helps if you have engagement, if you send out engagement surveys and you show that how much of engagement you have in your design system, how much community engagement you have. It really helps to showcase or build a good story around showing impact and success. And then when you have that story, when you have your initial success communicated 360, top, down, left, right, everywhere, there is no such thing as over communication in the design system world. It's all well communicated. If you're over communicating, you're well communicating, it's fine. So send out, any which way you can communicate to your leadership, to your stakeholders, to your sponsors, business. Find those avenues to communicate your story and the success of the design system. And then just keep repeating these things. And it was really, really nice. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. And thank you so much for listening. I really hope that you found it valuable, and there were some insights that you can take back home, try out, and let me know. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Let me know how it goes. If you need help, would love to. Thank you so much. Back to Sage.
Amber, thank you so much. It was so nice just to see you walk through the entire process and learn so many valuable insights. We really appreciate it. And we have a lot of questions for you. We're only going to be able to cover a couple of them. And folks, after the questions and the Q&A, we are also going to have a walkthrough of how you can actually connect your coded components from your design system and bring that into your design experience. Really interesting stuff. I highly recommend staying after the questions. So Amber, one of the questions that people were really interested in was, what is your strategy to approve a new component? How do you deal with cases that designers need to break a pattern?
My awesome team does that. All right, that's a very interesting question. And I get that question a lot. We talk about, so we have a process when, and we encourage contribution a lot. So all our product designers are encouraged and they're welcome to break a pattern. But if, for example, they try to break a basic pattern, for example, a CTA, which is orange, and they say, I want to make it, I don't know, blue or some other color, then we have a contribution tree, decision-making tree, which guides them through this. So we used to do this through meetings and one-to-ones, but with scale, it was not possible. So we created this interesting decision-making tree, which actually asks them a bunch of questions, whether it's available in the design system, what's the business value of it, what's the change management, how many layers of change it will go through, and have you spoken to your peers? Are they okay because it's a global pattern, etc. So you kind of create friction for changing global patterns. But if there is something that really deserves a change and there is a strong business case, there's a strong case, then it goes through a very simple process of setting up a meeting with the design system designer, making the proposal, and if the proposal stands ground and it's in terms of change management, it's an easier process, and there is impact and value, designer can communicate it, then go for it. We welcome change and we love change. That's how our design system has actually grown and matured.
Definitely. Yeah, it takes, like you said, it takes kind of a village of people to come together and create that evolving process with a design system.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So the other question is, are there situations where a new feature required a new design that conflicted with the existing design system, and how did the team resolve this?
Absolutely, absolutely. This can happen, and it has happened many times. Initially, when you have in the beginning of our design system journey, we didn't have a mature design system, so it didn't have a lot of use cases that our product designers were designing for, and the system did not address their needs fully. So they were they would design something and they would contribute it back to the system. So it goes through, you go ahead, you have a little bit of inconsistency in the app, and maybe the design system community will kill me for saying this, but you're experimenting, right? So we always allow our designers, our product designers, to, when it makes sense, and we empower them, so they don't even have to come to us if they feel confident that it makes sense to deviate from the design system and they're testing a pattern. Go ahead, test it, maybe do an A/B test, come back with some results. Data will tell you. If something improves a number somewhere, and we need to update our own design system components or pattern, we would definitely do that. But we let our designers experiment with patterns, but we also kind of ask them to be careful to not introduce a lot of inconsistencies, but by no means we tie them down to the system. Hey, you cannot design something new.
Yeah, I think you would have a lot of upset designers. That is really insightful. Thank you so much again. I've learned a lot, and I've already seen some thank yous coming through from other folks. So thank you so much for the time today, Amber. We really appreciate it. And like Amber had mentioned, reach out on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to us as well if you have any lingering questions. We are here and we're happy to address them. So
everybody, just want to take a couple of seconds to say big thanks to everybody. And thanks to you, Sage, Anita, everybody from the UXPin team, and enjoy the rest of the session, guys.
Thanks so much. All right, so like I mentioned, we have this exciting feature. It's called Merge, where you're actually able to take your coded components from your existing design system and then leverage it in your tool in UXPin. So I'm going to pass over to Jack, who's going to walk through a short demo of how you're able to achieve that.
Thanks, Sage. And thank you, Amber. That was an amazing presentation. I enjoyed watching your whole journey. Yeah, so my name is Jack. I'm going to share my screen, and I'd like to show you, once you have a design system, how you can leverage that and actually design with code. Bear with me 1 second here. Okay, as I mentioned, my name is Jack Behar, and I am the Merge onboarding specialist here at UXPin. And what that means is that I help teams onboard their coded design systems onto UXPin. So just a little intro on UXPin in case you're not familiar. So UXPin is a code-based and full-stack UX UI design platform. And with it, you have very advanced capabilities in everything from design, wireframing, prototyping, collaboration, documentation, and design to development handoff. Now, also keep in mind that this is all in one package, so you won't have to change from one application to the other. And some topics that UXPin has trailblazed are design systems, as we're seeing today, conditional logic and expressions. And what I'm here to talk about today is designing with your coded components leveraging UXPin Merge. So what is Merge? It's a capability of UXPin And essentially, it translates your UI code into a library within the editor. It's visual, configurable, interactive, and obviously governed because it's all running from a single source of truth, which is your component code. And after hearing Amber's presentation, you probably understand how important that is, right? To unite that tribe with a single source of truth. So here you're seeing a quick little example of a graph, and then that graph is modified by a designer using properties, and the exact code is handed off to the developers. So what are we trying to solve with Merge? Essentially, we're trying to bridge the gap between design and development. And here you see a fresco that was discovered in a small church in Spain, and it went through a restoration process. But due to that gap, whether it was tools, communication, or actual experience, they developed they created what was now lovingly called the potato Jesus on the internet, but it's actually set this little town on the map, and it's a huge tourist attraction now. But the problem with the gap is that it compromises deliverables, usability. A big one for me is that it creates frustration between designers and developers. And at best, you're going to get a mid-fi prototype, which contributes to product drift and is costly and wasteful. So here you can see a designer's concept on the left, and then what was actually developed on the right. So how can we alleviate this issue and actually develop what is being designed and vice versa? That is with Merge. So Merge now uses your component code as the single source of truth between the two disciplines. And if you notice on the right, development is leveraging that code in the way of components in their code. Whereas on the left, Merge is translating those coded components into the graphical UI elements that you can now design with. And of course, you still can create prototypes, assets, and documentation, but now you're going to achieve a pixel perfect parity between what you design and what is developed. It's going to be high fidelity by default. It's going to promote a consistent user experience. And a big one for me is that there is harmony between designers and developers. So I'd like to take a moment and just show you what UXPin Merge looks like and feels like. This is UXPin, if you're not familiar, and we have a palette here for layers and pages. And here we have a systems library, design system library. And today we're going to be using a material UI workshop library that we've created. It's rooted off of material, or I should say MUI. It's now referred to as MUI, which is a very robust React library, which provides all the components you can ever imagine and some pretty advanced theming capabilities as well. So this library was imported into UXPin with Merge, and now we can actually leverage those components and modify their properties as a developer would to create the variants that you're after. So for example, we can change the label to me, and we can change that variant to say outlined. And then we can add an end icon. Let's change that to contain there. And we'll add an icon of home. So you're noticing that all the variants of this component are now being manipulated by properties. No more pushing pixels. All those decisions are made, right? The paddings, the margins, the business rule, the rules around the design system are baked into the code. So, this is a very simple example, but now we can go further and maybe bring out a header, right, from our design system. And now this header allows you to modify the properties that are baked into that component. And for example, maybe this variant does not require a search or an account icon. Also, maybe we want to look at the layers and see that inside of it, there are a couple of icons that I can modify. So I can target that icon node and change this again to maybe home. So that's a header example. Let me show you a side navigation, which is one of a component that I'm very fond of. And essentially with this one component, you can achieve the many variants that you're seeing here. Maybe it's just a button with an icon, maybe it has a control element, or maybe it's got sub navigation in it. When I toggle that component, I see that it's made up of a list. And inside of that list, I have list items. And each list item has its own set of properties. So for example, I can say the inbox component, the inbox list item should be collapsible. And maybe I can show it in a collapsed state. And maybe I want to now take this list item and drop it inside of there to create a secondary navigation. So as you can see, just the same component, the same source of truth is now used to create many scenarios. But one thing to notice is that this is now all live code. So all the interactions that you can expect in your live environment will be available in the prototype stage without having to write any code. So for example, you can see the toggle, you can see the controls working. Search has its own capabilities as well. And then each component has its own events. So let's say that we want to drop in a card. And inside of that card, we want to drop in that button that we just created. And now what we want to do is when we click on this button, maybe we want to collapse the inbox dropdown. So I can go to its on-click event and set the property of that inbox element. And I can choose the property of collapsed to true. And now when I preview this and I click on this button, you can see how we interacted. So again, no code was used here. It's just using all your native code within your components. So you can build one-to-one real prototypes that are gonna actually be useful in testing and so on. So since we are using the same source of truth in the spec mode, I can now click on that card and the developer will get all the component codes, all the component code and configuration that they need to recreate this, this layout. And since they're using the same source of truth, it should be a one-to-one match between the two. Another thing I'd like to discuss is how do we integrate these components? And we have three approaches. Our biggest, most robust approach is our Git repo integration. It could be a public or private repo. And this does require a little bit of development resources, but it will give you a much more robust integration. Next up is our Storybook integration. Again, public or private. So you're just pointing to a link, a Storybook link, and it'll automatically import all those components. And finally, we have our new npm import, our merge component manager. So this also works with public or private libraries, and it allows you to point to a component package and import those components, decoupling the dependency on development. So I'd like to show you how I can bring in a component. I am going to go ahead and create a new library. And I'm going to say import React components. I'm going to give that library a name. And then we're going to be using the material UI library to import a button. So I can see that the package name for material or movie, I'm sorry, is movie-material. And all I have to do is bring that package name here. Next. And now that library is pointing to the package installed. So now I'm going to open Component Manager, and we're going to add a new button. So we're going to add a new component. And we're going to bring in the button component from the movie package, and we're going to give it a category. We'll call it inputs, import the component. And now we're going to publish that library. So this will take about a minute. And while that's happening, I'd like to show you the MUI button. So as you saw earlier, it's a single component that is driven by a lot of properties. So for example, the variant is one we'll look at, and you can change it from text, contained, and outlined. And of course, we also have a label for that button as well. But beyond that, we can also select different colors, sizes, if they're an icon only button, and so on. So every component system, or actually design system documentation, will have an API section where it discusses the props that modify that component. Amber showed us the Marshmallow website, which had this information as well. So let's go ahead and configure that component. We're at 79%, and it should wrap up here in about a second. Or not. Okay, so we're at 99%, and now we should get a confirmation saying that that component has been successfully created. And we can refresh the library. And now we're going to configure those properties for the button. So I have my button component. Currently it has no property set, but we'll start by adding the children property, which, if you look at the API, is the content of the component. So you can add the script, you can give it an alternate name, maybe label, and a description. And in this case, it's just going to be a string, because we're just passing over some copy. So the default value, we'll set it as click me, and you can see how the button started taking shape in its preview. So let's go ahead and add that property, and we'll create another property. And this time we'll look at the variant property, which allows you to set the different variants to use with the button. So we'll give it that name. And this time we're going to give it a list of options: contained, outlined, and text as it's documented. And you can see that it chose the first one as a default value. We can add this property now. So we have two properties, and this should be enough for me to show you how that component interacts now with the UI editor. I can save changes. Sorry about my display issues here. And then publish that library. Once your library has been initially published, it should be a quick update. And now I can come back to UXPin, refresh my library. And you'll notice that we have our material button now available. Of course, the material is a open source framework, but this would point to your component packages. And now you'd be able to design with them and utilize that same source of truth, same as your developers. Yeah, so that's my little intro to Merge. Of course, there's a lot more to explore. We have version control, allowing you to create multiple versions of your design system and testing them at different states. And we have continuous integration, plenty of features to go over. So if you want to know more, please reach out. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jack. And thank you to everybody who stayed over. We really appreciate it. Merge is super exciting. And if you're interested, I did drop in the chat a link so that you can access Merge and be able to test it for yourself. So please check that